Spirit warriors, imagine this. The very person they mocked, dismissed, underestimated, just became their worst nightmare. Have you ever been so calm, so kind, so full of light that people forgot what would happen if they pushed you too far? Let me tell you about a chosen one named Sarai. She was light personified, peaceful, kind, always giving. She prayed for others, even when they cursed her. Sarai was the one people vented to, leaned on, used, and then ghosted when things turned around for them. But one day something snapped. Sarai didn't become vengeful. No, she became honest. She stood in truth so raw and divine that it burned through every false friend and fake smile like fire on dry grass. The same people who whispered that she was too soft began telling others, "Yo, don't mess with her." See, they thought she was just an earth angel. But they forgot that even angels are warriors, especially the chosen ones. Spirit warriors, being holy doesn't mean being harmless. Being divine doesn't mean being docile. Some angels don't carry harps. They carry swords. So why is it that when a chosen one finally rises, the very ones who treated them like a doormat suddenly act like they've seen a demon? As the saying goes, beware the fury of a patient man. Or in our case, beware the roar of a silent earth angel. Chosen ones, this message is for you. If you've ever been underestimated because of your light, if you've ever been treated like you're weak because you're peaceful, watch this video until the very end. Because today, we're revealing exactly why people get shook when the earth angel finally says, "I'm done being your target." So grab your spiritual armor, spirit warriors, because we're going deep. The world expected you to fold, but guess what? They played with the wrong angel. Point 1. Your light is not weakness, it's controlled power. Chosen ones, let's set the record straight. The world has lied to you. They told you gentleness was weakness, that your calm spirit made you easy to control or dismiss. But the truth? Gentleness is power under control. It takes far more strength to stay calm in chaos than to explode in anger. In fact, psychologists confirm that emotional regulation, choosing peace over rage, is a sign of high emotional intelligence and inner mastery. When you chose not to react, it wasn't because you didn't have the fire. It was because your fire is sacred, and you've been trained by heaven to wield it with precision. People confuse silence with surrender, but let's be real. Your silence was a storm waiting for divine permission. Earth angels. Like you are not here to play games. You've watched, observed, and understood people long before they realized you even saw them. And the moment you finally speak your truth, that truth becomes a divine wrecking ball. It doesn't just shake the room, it annihilates every lie, illusion, and mask they've carefully constructed. It terrifies them, because now they know. You knew all along. You didn't clap back because you were scared. You didn't retaliate because your spirit is governed by a higher authority. That's not fragility. That's spiritual dominance. The restraint you showed was never passive. It was God-trained. And when God finally gives the signal, you don't just rise. You roar. You don't just respond. You move like thunder wrapped in light. A divine force cloaked in calm, prepared for battle, chosen for impact. So keep that gentleness, chosen one. It's not your weakness, it's your divine weapon. Let them fear the storm they never saw coming, because the moment you rise, the world will know. Your peace was never a pause. It was prophecy in disguise. Point 2. You carry divine judgment, not just mercy. Angels don't just comfort, they correct, awaken, and disrupt. The image of an angel gently whispering peace into chaos is only half the story. Real angels, especially chosen ones, carry both compassion and conviction. They know when to offer a soft word and when to let the truth thunder like a war drum. There comes a divine moment when God doesn't just nudge you to observe, He commands you to speak. And when a chosen one opens their mouth, they don't just talk. They expose. Their words aren't just sounds, they're soul mirrors. They reflect hidden motives, reveal secrets buried under years of lies, and strip away pretense. And that's exactly why people start shifting in their seats. It's not that you changed, as they like to claim. It's that you stopped sugarcoating dysfunction. See, before you were quiet, not because you were weak, but because you were waiting on divine timing. You were the angel God placed gently in the middle of chaos, not to be trampled, but to observe, to extend mercy, to offer light in a dark room. But when that mercy was mistaken for naivety, when your silence was taken as submission, the assignment shifted. That angel became a storm, a holy disruption, a voice that refuses to play along with delusion. Psychologically, we're wired to protect our self-image. So when someone sees us clearly, it can feel threatening. This is why people become uncomfortable in your presence. It's not you they fear. It's the truth that radiates from you. Studies in behavioral psychology show that people often project guilt or discomfort onto others who challenge their self-deception. That's what's happening when they say, "You've changed." No, you didn't change. They got exposed. You were never sent here to fit in. You weren't made for the cliques, the shallow validation, or the echo chambers. You were born to call things out, to wake people up. And it's not arrogance, it's obedience. When the assignment changes, the posture must too. You went from silent intercessor to outspoken warrior because God knew. Point 3, people forgot your assignment came with armor. Chosen ones, the silent storm that shakes the spirit realm, chosen. Ones are often mistaken for being soft, docile, or weak, simply because we carry peace in our steps and gentleness in our voices. But what many don't realize is that we are earth angels and spiritual warriors, walking paradoxes of love and power, calm and conquest. While others were out there throwing punches in the physical, we were waging war in silence. Not with fists, but with faith, not with insults, but with intercession. And oh, how they underestimated the power of a prayer whispered in tears. You see, when we prayed, it wasn't passive, it was tactical, it was precise. A spiritual missile aimed not at people, but at principalities, at dark forces, at every lie spoken in secret. Ephesians 6:12 reminds us that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, and chosen ones live that truth. Our prayers shift atmospheres, our silence speaks louder than drama, and our every tear, that was a seed in the soil of the Spirit, growing roots in unseen places. When people laughed, mocked, or dismissed you, thinking you were just the quiet one who always forgave, they didn't realize your silence was not surrender, it was set up. Turning the other cheek was not weakness, it was a warning, because the moment heaven's timing aligned with your authority, the armor came on. The same people who thought you'd never fight back were shocked when they saw your sword glisten with divine truth. Not a sword of vengeance, but of righteous confrontation. When you finally stood up, not in rage, but in clarity, the atmosphere shifted. People panicked because your energy changed, but it wasn't a change. It was a reveal. You weren't pretending. You were protecting your peace, your calling, your alignment. The most chilling realization for them? You knew all along. Their gossip, manipulation, envy, it never went unnoticed. You just chose to respond with grace, until grace turned into God-ordained action. Now they're not laughing. They're remembering every word they said, wondering how much you truly knew. And the truth is, you knew enough. Enough to forgive them, rise above it, and move on. Higher, stronger, lighter. Because chosen ones don't get bitter, we get better. And when God uses even your enemies as stepping stones, you don't just win the battle, you redefine it. Point 4. You scare them because you know their secrets. This is the part that really gets them. You were silent, but you were watching. You weren't loud. You weren't dramatic. You didn't make scenes, but you saw everything. That fake laugh, that side eye, that carefully disguised jab in the form of a compliment. Oh yes, you clocked it all. You knew who lied, who switched up, who threw you under the bus while smiling right in your face. And instead of retaliating, you did something most wouldn't. You blessed them. You kept your integrity, stayed kind, and chose peace over pettiness. That's what separates the chosen ones from the rest. We're built different. Now here's where it gets really uncomfortable for them. The mask is off. And no, you didn't rip it off. They fumbled it themselves. You didn't have to point fingers. Your energy, your growth, your silence, and your discernment did the heavy lifting. Psychology calls this empathic accuracy, the ability to intuitively understand what others are thinking or feeling without them saying a word. But we call it Holy Spirit intuition. It's not just a hunch, it's spiritual insight. And when you've got divine discernment, you start recognizing people's spirits before they even say hello. You don't need proof, screenshots, or drama to expose anyone. You just walk in truth, and suddenly, their guilt does the talking. Their shame bubbles to the surface. They start avoiding eye contact. They grow uncomfortable around you, not because you changed, but because you see them now. And nothing terrifies a deceiver more than being seen spiritually naked. What's wild is, they thought your silence meant weakness, but in reality, it was strategy. You were observing, growing, praying, evolving. You were storing wisdom and letting God fight your battles. Now, your elevation is speaking louder than any clapback ever could. They don't need your words to feel convicted. Your presence alone triggers their conscience. And guess what? That's not arrogance. That's alignment. That's what happens when you walk with purpose and clarity. People feel it. So, chosen one, keep your peace. You never needed to drag anyone into the light. They exposed themselves the moment you stepped fully into yours. Let them sit with their guilt, their regret, their unspoken apologies. You keep rising. You've got bigger battles to win and brighter stages to shine on. Point 5. They thought you would break, but you broke the chains. They poked, they mocked, they pushed, all hoping you'd fold like a cheap card table under pressure. It was never really about what you did or said. It was about the quiet strength you carried, the potential they saw in you before you fully saw it in yourself. And sometimes, that potential is threatening, not because you've harmed anyone, but because your existence challenges their comfort zone. You reminded them of what they could have been, had they chosen growth over gossip, healing over hurting. But instead of breaking down, you broke through, you transformed. You didn't crumble under the weight of criticism. You recalibrated. Like carbon under pressure becoming diamond, you evolved under fire. That's what real growth looks like. It's not loud, it's not dramatic. It's a quiet, consistent uprising, a silent rebellion that says, I don't need your permission to become who I already am. Now you walk freer, louder, and bolder, not in arrogance, but in alignment. And that, my friend, terrifies the ones who only felt powerful when you played small. Psychologically, people who resort to belittling others often struggle with low self-esteem. According to studies in social psychology, mockery and undermining are often projection mechanisms. They highlight more about the attacker's fears than the target's flaws. So when you refuse to shrink to make them comfortable, you disrupted their illusion of dominance. You forced them to look at their own limitations. They never imagined that their petty tests, those condescending jabs and subtle rejections, would awaken the warrior in you. But they did. Every jab was a rep in the spiritual gym, and you got stronger, not spiteful. Your silence became strategy, your absence a message. You stopped seeking validation from broken mirrors and began seeing your reflection through the eyes of purpose. You no longer begged for peace, you became peace. You carried it into every room you entered. And when they saw that, when they saw that you weren't waiting for their seat at the table but building your own, they knew. Game over. You didn't just survive, you flipped the script. You stopped dancing for their approval and started walking in destiny. And now their power over you? Gone? Replaced by regret? Let them sit in it. You've got higher ground to claim. Point 6. Your energy forces demons to flee. People often don't realize what's really happening on a spiritual level. It's not just jealousy, insecurity, or personality clashes. Sometimes it's deeper than that. It's spiritual. The demons in them recognize the divinity in you before their conscious minds even catch up. That's why certain people get irritated by your peace, your presence, or your quiet confidence. It's not because you're doing something wrong. It's because you're doing something right. Your light exposes what they've been trying to hide, and when truth walks into a room, lies get nervous. Have you ever walked into a space and suddenly someone starts throwing shade, picking fights, or making subtle jabs for no reason? You're thinking, what did I do? But it's not about what you did, it's about who you are. Your spirit is carrying something holy, something unshakable, and it disrupts their inner chaos. That gossip they spread, that passive aggression, it's not really about you. It's the demons in them reacting to the light in you, just like roaches scatter when you turn on the light. You didn't even come in loud or aggressive. You came in with quiet strength, with love, with authenticity, and that alone unsettled their whole spiritual ecosystem. This is what spiritual warfare really looks like. It's not always a dramatic showdown with fire and thunder. It's the subtle friction between your God-given light and the spiritual darkness in others. And here's the plot twist. You didn't just show up with love. You showed up with light-sourced weaponry, peace that defies their chaos, joy that outlasts their bitterness, discernment that sees through their games. You didn't have to expose them. They exposed themselves just by reacting to your glow. The moment you stop dimming your light to make others comfortable is the moment those demons start to panic. Because your full power, your full truth, brings accountability to the room. And dark spirits don't like accountability. They thrive in secrecy, but your presence shines too brightly for that. You weren't sent here to be liked. You were sent here to awaken, to heal, to lead. So don't shrink to fit. Stand tall. You were armed with heavenly artillery, and every time you show up authentically, the battlefield shifts in your favor. Point 7. You were sent to be a wake-up call, not a welcome mat. Chosen ones, here's the raw truth. You weren't sent to comfort everyone. You were sent to confront, to challenge, to disrupt. Some people didn't need your kindness. They needed your absence. They didn't need another chance. They needed consequences. Your presence was never just casual. It was divine. You walking away wasn't petty. It was prophetic. It was the very lesson their soul had been dodging for years. Your silence? That wasn't avoidance. That was the sermon. And when you finally spoke the truth, that was heaven blowing the trumpet and shaking up their comfort zone. See, God doesn't play about his chosen ones. Earth angels don't just float in to sprinkle glitter. They arrive with assignments. When you step into your divine purpose, you become both the blessing and the boundary. You bring healing with your words, but you also bring clarity with your absence. You are the medicine they didn't know they needed and the mirror they desperately tried to avoid. Your energy exposes every lie they told themselves. That's power, angels. That's divine order. They thought you were soft, easy to manipulate, easy to control, but you weren't soft. You were strategic. You observed, you discerned, and then you moved exactly when the Spirit said now. And when earth angels activate their purpose, even hell gets nervous. That's why the attacks came heavy, why the betrayal hurt deeper, why they tried to dim your light. But your glow wasn't man-made, it was heaven-crafted. This isn't just motivation, it's revelation. You weren't made to fit in their world. You were sent to shift it. You don't exist to keep the peace. You exist to speak peace, walk in truth, and usher in divine change. And guess what? The very people who mocked you, doubted you, tried to play you, now they're sitting with regret. They see you rising, glowing, winning, and it burns. But don't get bitter, chosen one. Get better. Keep walking in your calling. Keep honoring your truth. Because when God elevates his soldiers, he also educates their enemies. So go ahead and rise, boldly, gracefully, purposefully. You're not just in the room, angel. You are the room. And every step you take, that's heaven's strategy in motion. Spirit warriors, this is your reminder. You are the light, but you are also the lightning. Let them talk. Let them wonder. Let them wrestle with the fact that the angel they laughed at became the giant they now fear. Chosen ones, never feel guilty for growing out of the shell they tried to keep you in. You didn't change, you revealed. So keep glowing, keep roaring, keep showing them that earth angels are nothing to play with. Because when heaven backs you, even devils retreat. Stay bold, stay bright, and most of all, stay awake, chosen ones. Your spiritual journey is just getting started.